Welcome to this episode of the Heartbeat for Hire podcast. I feature Olympians, CEOs, disruptors, authors, professional athletes, and the best of the best, where they share their stories of resilience with my lens on leadership and culture. Let's get started. Welcome to this episode of the Heartbeat for Hire podcast. I am delighted to bring our guest to you today. Mac Lackey is an American entrepreneur who has started, scaled, and sold 6 companies, all 7 or 8-figure exits. Mac and his companies have been featured on CNN, Wall Street Journal, Fast Company, USA Today, and the New York Times. Notable ventures include KYCK, which was acquired by NBC Sports, Khakis, acquired by Remington, and InternetSoccer Network, acquired by a division of Sky, News Corp and Sky. He additionally served as a member of the board of directors for publicly traded LendingTree for over 5 years and is currently an angel investor in over 50 companies. Mac was a collegiate All-American and played professional soccer before starting his first internet company in 1995. He is currently mentoring entrepreneurs via his company ExitDNA and is the owner of a 115-year-old Spanish soccer team, Algeciras CF. Welcome to the show, Mac.
Oh gosh, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Well, it is a thrill and a joy to have you on the show. You have so much expertise to draw on, but for our audience sake, would you do us the honor and share a little bit of your story?
Sure. I appreciate the long bio. That covers a lot of I guess the highlights, but I think of my life in kind of 2 big buckets. Up until I'd say my whole childhood, soccer was my passion, my goals and dreams. All I wanted to do was play in college, play professionally. That's all I ever thought about. So that was a big part of my kind of formative years. And then, as you read in the bio, after playing, I kind of got to the end of the line for playing. I'm super jealous of young Americans coming up now who have all these opportunities. I'm too old. Uh,
Yeah.
so the path came to an end. But I started my first company in the first quarter of 1995, which was an internet company right after Netscape launched the commercial web browser. So we were incredibly early slash lucky to be really at the beginning of the internet. And that was such a key to my career because we saw a trend early. We bet pretty big on it. We believed in it when a lot of other people didn't really see it. And it's funny in hindsight, of course, it seems so obvious that the internet was going to be big. But at the time, people I respected a lot, mentors and very successful leaders and CEOs kept telling me it's a fad. Nobody's ever going to put a credit card on the internet, all this stuff.
Right.
And we just didn't believe it. So anyway, I became an entrepreneur, kind of fell in love with startups, doing something different every day, building things. All those were just really powerful trends that I loved. And then I was very fortunate. I sold my first company in 1998. I had an 8-figure exit. I was in my mid 20s. It was life changing in certainly financial terms, but also in the way I viewed companies and building things, and really shaped kind of the rest of the journey.
Mm.
So that's kind of the path I was on. Yeah, started, scaled up, and exited 6 companies, and learned so much along the way because I never mentioned in my bio that I made a million mistakes. But as you well know, the million mistakes oftentimes are more powerful and informative than the things you get right. So
No,
that's the short version.
no question. I think we all grow way more from failure than we do from success. So I get that. So before I jump into soccer, because I do want to jump into soccer, I want to talk a little bit about all of your entrepreneurship. And we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to the show. And could you spare some words of wisdom for those that are kind of cutting their teeth on entrepreneurship for the first time, and those who have maybe been in it for a little bit, feeling that plateau? What would you say to them?
No, I think there's a couple of things that I learned along the way that I certainly would say to almost any entrepreneur. One of those is that most of the companies I had, if I look back, the success that we had is almost always related to people. I can always look back and say, I had amazing business partners. I hired incredible engineers. I hired just phenomenal salespeople. So people matter about as much as anything.
Yeah.
I would, now I'm a pretty prolific angel investor, and I always tell companies that I'm thinking about investing in that, the saying is always, I will bet the jockey. And I would pick an amazing team with an okay idea
Mhm.
all day long before an amazing idea or amazing opportunity with
Yeah,
an okay team. So people, I know that's something you talk a lot
I
about,
do.
matter. Um,
I couldn't agree more. And I think people lose sight of that, especially when they're, rolling in the cash and they're just really seeing the success. They forget where it all comes from and the blood, sweat, and tears that come from all the people that give their whole heart. So the leaders that lose that perspective tend to not only burn out, but they tend to lose their people and they don't understand why. So I love that you remember that. And how, looking back at your soccer career, I love having athletes on the show, partly because it's such an easy coachy kind of example, but also because of the resilience and the grit and the creativity when it comes to leadership. What was some of the life lessons you learned as a player and then maybe now as an owner?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The analogies, the so many things about sports are great alignment with business, and
Mhm.
so I share your sort of enthusiasm. With the benefit of hindsight, it's easy to see these things, but we just talked about people and how important they are. Very similar, on a soccer field, there are certain roles. You have 11 players, but there are certain roles that are so critical to a successful team. And all the positions need to be filled. All of them need to be filled with talented individuals. But what is the difference between, an okay team and a world-class team is almost always leadership. It's the
Mhm.
captains. And I was very fortunate in that one of my longtime business partners, serial co-founder of mine, I met on the soccer field. He was 2 years older than me. He was the captain of the team when I was kind of coming up as this, young kid. And the reason he was so influential is because I was at a high school that 10th grade, we had 10, 11, 12 was our high school. I know some schools are different, but we had kind of this unstated rules that 10th graders didn't play on varsity.
Mm.
And when I got to high school, I, got pulled up to varsity, much to the chagrin of a lot of the older players who
I
were
bet.
very mad. And I had this, captain of the team who was really one of the few that kind of took me under his wing, and his leadership allowed me to, sort of survive a very challenging year because, again, everyone was mad that I was, kind of getting pulled up. But also it showed me the difference of I was a goal scorer and I, was a technically talented player, but I wasn't a leader the way he was.
Mhm.
He would manage the team, he would manage the locker room. And so I learned a lot about leadership and management by watching him when I was a young sort of player. So long-winded answer there, but leadership on the soccer field and everyone finding their roles and how they fit roles and responsibilities, just like a business. I could always
Mhm.
look back and see the teams that I had that were the best were the ones that figured out roles and responsibilities and leadership. And that
Mhm.
translates very well into business.
I love that you recognized that you were a great technician, you were a great player, and you weren't a great leader. When did that shift for you? I mean, you obviously had the example of, in high school, and by the way, my son is a sophomore soccer player, so he's following in your footsteps, although we'll see about varsity in the fall. But when did that shift happen as a player? And we'll jump into the ownership thing in a second.
Well, I think in some ways, one of the things that I think I got right along the way was being pretty self-critical, and I think I was confident on the soccer field, maybe, extremely confident, I'm sure in some ways, and that sort of unbridled confidence was part of my early startup career, thinking I could defy the odds, that all of
Sure.
the people were telling me that, I was going to struggle and fail. And so there was a little bit of a chip on my shoulder that I, carried forward. But I would say, being self-critical, I realized I think I am a lead by example, and I am a person that might be able to share vision and enthusiasm. But I never, through my whole career on the field and as a entrepreneur, I always really wanted to surround myself with someone that I thought was a better manager. Like
Yeah.
leadership to me was management is one thing, leadership is something different. And every once in a while you find both in the same person,
Yeah.
amazing. But I realized that I think I was more of a leader than a manager. I've never been great at managing day to day, managing, people kind of in the trenches. And so that was a critical success factor for me is I'm going to lead, but I need a really good manager to
Yeah.
work alongside me. So I sort of figured that out relatively early.
I love that. And I think the best leaders do surround themselves with people who make them better. I know for me, when I was building big teams, I didn't want people that were just like me. I wanted people that had strengths that I didn't have, and I wanted them to shine because it made me look better. It made our team function better, and it gave people more examples of what good leadership looks and feels like. And that's why I do the show because everybody has different styles and everybody has a different need from their leaders and managers. And I think it's so important that we illustrate those examples as much as possible because leadership needs an overhaul. And I wish there were more of them. So, talk a little bit about owning a soccer team is different than coaching a soccer team. So, how do you inspire or do you even have the ability to, or what's the role? Explain.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So, I think like a lot of individuals, I've been so fortunate to check off a lot of what I would call like bucket list items. And a lot of my life is, I think, I really optimized for family.
Mhm.
I built my company so that I could be home every night at 5 o'clock with my daughters. I coached their teams. I carved pumpkins in their classes and I pulled them out of school and we traveled the world. Like
Love
there
it.
was a lot of my journey that was about optimizing for family, which again, I'm happy to talk about. But one of my kind of bucket list goals, which seemed out of reach, was I just had this dream of I wanted to buy a team. It just sounded so fun and exciting. And my family and I ended up moving to Barcelona when my daughters were still in kind of middle school for a life experience. And while I was there, that was back in 2014. And while I was there, I just really started thinking more deeply about, maybe retiring in Spain and just this idea of maybe buying a team. And long story short, about 3 or 4 years ago, it just kind of kept coming back to my mind. And I thought, you know what? The timing is really interesting. I have the flexibility to travel. My wife and I were about to be empty nesters with both girls, in college. And so I started taking a serious look at teams and ended up buying this, amazing team in southern Spain, 115 years old,
Amazing.
right on the coast, looking at, you can see Africa right across the Strait of Gibraltar. It's just a beautiful place on earth. But my role is, I am the team owner. I'm very fortunate to have a CEO that I hired that is massively overqualified, this incredible individual that runs the day-to-day business. Um, and I really do allow him and all the other experts to do their thing. We have a coach, we have a sports staff, we have physical trainers, we have professional athletes. And I go to every home match because I want to be there. I want to be supportive and I'm excited, but I don't have any kind of role. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't tell anyone what to do. I let them do what they're good at. And so I'm involved because I'm excited, not because I have a role, basically. And I suppose that, over time, I have a vision that I share with the CEO. We're very aligned in what we want to build together. It's a multi-year kind of vision and strategy. And my role across that journey will of course go up and down as we're doing different things. But for the most part, I stay out of the way and let the experts, do their jobs.
And how much like Ted Lasso is it?
I like the
Huge
I
Ted
like
Lasso fan. My son's a massive, massive European football fan, so I have to
yeah.
ask.
No, well, it's funny. I get a lot of the is it like Ryan Reynolds? And I always say,
Right.
I
That's
must be
yeah.
better looking than Ryan Reynolds. That's got to be the thing. No, it's what's crazy is we were kind of doing this, before a lot of these shows came out. But what I think it's starting to illustrate is the interest
Yeah.
in the sport globally, not only from watching great matches on TV, but American owners, American entrepreneurs seeing that, gosh, there's an opportunity to
Yeah.
get involved, whether that's co-owners or, just doing something. And so I'm actually really excited that some of these shows are starting to raise the profile of
Yeah,
what's
for
happening.
sure.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved the show, and I loved the examples of leadership throughout every episode. In fact, there was a woman on LinkedIn who was a friend of mine. Her name is Megan, and she does lasso moments every week. An episode would air, and she'd put on her aviators and her visor, and she'd kind of recount one of the leadership moments from the show. And there were so many, so it was just a masterclass in leadership. And for anybody that loves sports or football. Oh my gosh, what a treat.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love what it's done for the sport. I think it's fantastic. And I mean, I might be the only one, probably not, but who'd like to see it called football because you actually kick the ball with your feet. It makes a little more sense than American football, but I don't know if I'm going to win that one.
I agree with you. And because the team is in Spain, of course, I refer to it as football,
Yeah,
99% of the time, but I have a lot of relationships and connections and things we're trying to do in the US. And I
of
have to,
course.
like, switch hats constantly and say, I mean
Yeah.
soccer, so.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. So talk a little bit about what inspires you.
Well, I think, the one thing that I just mentioned briefly, um, I did July of 2000 to August of 2000, probably the most important 60-day period of my life. In July of 2000, I sold my second company. I was 29 years old. In so many ways, I felt like I was on top of the world. I'd had two eight-figure exits. I'm in my 20s. I had all these people around me telling me I was going to be the next, fill in the
Yeah,
blank. And I still, I think, I hope I was being, reasonably humble, but I was also really excited about the future. I was going to build things. I
yeah.
love the
How could you
internet,
not be?
and I'd also, in a lot of ways, I'd sort of checked off all those the financial stuff that I dreamed of, like I had checked them off. And so I was really sitting in this position that was interesting. And I was about to have my first daughter who was due in August of 2000. And at that moment, it was really the first time that I think I probably would have been diagnosed or diagnosable as clinically depressed, oddly
Mm,
enough, because I was on top of the world. But what it was really struggling with is I wanted to be the kind of dad who was always there. I
yeah,
was just so focused on that's what I wanted. But all of these people around me kept saying, Mac, how can you be home at 5? You're traveling the world. You work 7 days a week. You sleep on the floor in your office like you're a workaholic. And so, long story short, about a week before she was born, I was basically, talking to my wife's belly and just saying, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to be there for everything. I'm just going to do it. And the reason it's so relevant is that was August. She was born in August of 2000.
mm,
Literally 19 years later, almost to the day, August of 2019, I dropped that little girl off for her freshman year at NYU.
mm.
And I was able to look at her and say, I wasn't a perfect dad. Of course, I made
None
mistakes.
of us
We all
are.
do. But I was there. I did all. I was at every play. I would every dance recital. We traveled. I did a lot of one-on-one things with her and her younger sister. But I also could look back and say, during that 19-year period, I also built and sold four more companies. And so the way I did that, I wasn't sure how it was going to work. I was, more committed to being a dad than like, if I couldn't become an entrepreneur anymore, so be it. That was kind of my attitude. But what's so interesting about it is I'm so passionate now because I believe that this hustle culture phenomena that's like infecting entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I really need to, like, kind of shout from the rooftops that that's not the right way. And
Yeah.
I spent, 19 years with my own case study. I know it works. I know what it means. And to kind of cut to the point, one of the first things, and you'll appreciate this as your view on leadership, what I really did, practically speaking, almost immediately is at 4:45 in the afternoon in my offices, I would physically stand up and walk out the door.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter what I was doing. I could literally be at the conference room, boardroom, at the whiteboard. I would put the whiteboard pen down and physically walk out of the room. And people the first week or two thought Mac has lost his mind. Like, is he serious? Like he's
Yeah.
going to come back in,
He was in
right?
the middle of a sentence. Yeah.
Yeah, he just literally put the pen down and walked out. And the powerful thing that happened, I still get like chills even thinking about because I take myself back there.
Mm-hmm.
After about a week or two, you could just see the shift. All of the people would start to say, well, we know Mac is going to leave at 4:45. So who's going to run the meeting when Mac's gone?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to prepare the PowerPoint because Mac won't be here at 5:15?
Mm-hmm.
If there's a sales call, who's going to take the call? And so all of a sudden, the team around me that was already very capable, they step up.
Yeah.
And not only step up, they step up in a big way. You watch them say, I'm going to lead the meeting. Will you prepare the documents? Can you take the sales call? Because and all of a sudden, my requirement for being in the office was going down. I mean,
Yeah.
instantly. So now, of course, I have this benefit of hindsight, but I always, tell entrepreneurs, if you ever want to sell your business, I do a lot of coaching for exits, and I always say, if you want to sell your business one day, nobody wants to buy a business where the founder is in the critical path of
Yeah.
every decision and every meeting and every SOP. That's not a good business. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a direct correlation between an efficient, scalable, and exitable business and personal freedom.
Yeah.
How powerful, so it's a something I'm super passionate about. I don't think I've done a good job shouting from the rooftops. It's something I just feel strongly about.
Well, you know what I loved so much about what you said is you focused on the journey and not the outcome. And the people that I have on my show and the people that I know in my life that are the most successful are much more focused on the ride and the journey and the growth and the relationships. And I think that's such an important lesson. So consider the rooftops you've shouted, at least here anyway. This audience is going to learn that. But I think no one should underestimate the journey. And that's true for parenting. That's true for business. It's true for anything that you are passionate about. You've got to live in those moments and appreciate them for what they are, because that's where your growth happens. It's where your decisions are made that affect, everything after that. So I love that you shared that. This is probably going to be a pretty similar answer, but what would you like your legacy to be?
Um, I sort of think of my legacy in two ways. I mean, one of course is my family. I have two daughters who I think are amazing, and again, not that I was a great dad or my wife and I were great parents, but we put a lot of energy into hopefully enabling them to pursue whatever they want to do in their lives. And so part of my legacy, I hope, is what they do, with their lives. And the other is in this kind of second chapter of life, I really want to help entrepreneurs through the journey. I love that you said that specific word, because at my age, I can feel it when I'm here in the US. I'm back, 2 weeks now. I've been back in the US, and my hometown where I grew up is a banking town. And a lot of my friends have been very successful investment bankers, and they've done very well. But I would probably say 80+% of them, when I'm talking to them, if we're being honest and we're having a
Yeah.
beer or a coffee, they missed it. Like
Yeah.
they've made their money. They're very successful. They have their beach house and they have their sports cars, but their kids are in college or about to leave or just, finishing, and they weren't there. And I hate it for them, and there's nothing I can do about that. But now when I talk to newer entrepreneurs or younger entrepreneurs, or even people that are just thinking about shifting gears, I think it's really, really important to just make sure they understand that it is not a trade-off. It's not like your business is not going to be successful because you're going to be spending time with your family or focused on your health or whatever you're passionate about. it's the opposite. Is your business is going to be more successful
Mm.
because you're going to design it where you can leave the office, you can work out at 3 in the afternoon if you want. And so that message just has to be pushed out there. And I'm hoping that that's something that maybe someone will say Mac helped, spread the word on.
Yeah. Well, you're teaching people to design their life. And
Exactly right.
I mean, for anyone that knows my story, I spent 25 years in corporate America, 23 were climbing the ranks at IBM, left to go to another company. And in 6 months, I was fired. And if I wasn't shoved out of the nest, I wouldn't be doing any of this stuff. I wouldn't have a podcast. I wouldn't have written my book. I wouldn't have started coaching and speaking. And I feel so much more aligned with my purpose doing this than I ever did. And all the accolades and president's trips and stuff that I had in my corporate job. So yeah, I get that. So what's next for Mac?
So I'm going to really continue. I think this second chapter, the way I sort of think about life is I've probably, built my last company kind of by design. I want to spend, the next part of life mentoring, advising entrepreneurs. I want to, continue to focus on this team. My wife and I will probably spend, 8, 9 months a year in Spain and continue to travel, which is something I love to do.
Amen.
So, I'm by no means like slowing down or retiring by any traditional sense,
I
but I'm
think you're
hoping,
living really well. I don't look at it as
yeah,
slowing down. I think you're
no,
just like in the right gear. It's
and
good.
again, I love the words you're using. They resonate with me as well. Like it's to me, it is lifestyle design. We were talking for 3 minutes before we hit record here, and I designed the home office that I have right now because it's 5 yards
From
from
your
my
house.
house,
Yeah.
which means, we'll stop recording the podcast and I'll go in and have
Go
lunch with
home.
my wife,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I've designed my life very intentionally. Still learning a lot, still surrounded by amazing people, speaking at masterminds and doing things like that because I want to be surrounded by people to learn from. So yeah, that's kind of the continuation for me.
Well, your zest for learning is refreshing, and I think my favorite people that I love to hang with and learn from are the ones that stay curious, the ones that want to learn and do better and try new things. And I'm fortunate to be surrounded by a flock of people like that. So it's very cool. So Mac, where can people find you?
So I would say two things. I have a personal site, maclackey.com, MAC. Maclackey.com, and then ExitDNA or ExitDNA.com is kind of the mentoring program that I run. And so those websites and then on social media, most everywhere at Mac Lackey. I'm still, trying to get better at social media. I spent a lot of my life trying to stay focused on companies and my family. And so
Yeah.
the idea of getting out there is still something I'm learning,
Yeah.
but I try to share a lot of free information and help people. So those are all places you can certainly reach out or find me.
Well, you are a delight. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing all of your words of wisdom. I'll be rooting for your team. And thanks for really just being a wonderful guest. So I hope you enjoyed yourself. And everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Heartbeat for Hire podcast. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to the YouTube channel or leave a 5-star review at Apple or Spotify. Thank you so much. Go lead with heart and have a great day. Are you ready to elevate your leadership style and create an exceptional workplace that stands out from the crowd? I'm here to introduce you to a game-changing resource that will transform the way you lead and shape your company culture. It's time to embrace the power of top-down culture. This practical guide empowers your leadership for lasting success, helping you create a workplace where everyone thrives. Get top-down culture today, and let's reshape the future of leadership together. Thanks for listening to this episode of Heartbeat for Hire. I hope you enjoyed what you heard. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel or consider leaving a 5-star review and a great rating at Spotify or Apple. Thank you so much for your support. Have a great day.